What you know, Alibis? Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. It's Sunday, August 17th. Hope you guys have had a good weekend. If you're not subscribed on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to like the video. And if you want notifications of when I post new content or go live, click the little bell icon. Towards the end of last week, the Idaho State Police released over 600 pages of files related to the case. I've been going through those this weekend and weeding out some of the things we already know. And I decided on this episode, we would focus on what was found on BK's cell phone and also interviews with classmates and staff members at Washington State University who all seem to have a very similar story to tell about BK and his time there and their interactions with him. So let's jump into some of the phone records. There have been a couple of interviews by the people who did the Celebrate extraction and the analysis on his phone. They were on Ashley Banfield last week and also gave an interview to People, and that's where I populated this information. One of the most disturbing things that was found is he was looking up videos of non-consensual acts, if you get my drift. I have to be careful how I word things on here because you can get in trouble with YouTube. Another thing they found, he would call his parents pretty much all the time, and they noted it seemed he would call them to fall asleep. He had 18 personal contacts listed. They were very impersonal, like they would be listed as the girl I ran with, second girl I ran with, and in parentheses, one of those had hair. They found he would take selfies. Sometimes he would be shirtless and flexing his muscles, but those would not be sent to anybody. He also had photos of his car and photos of a number of women in various states of undress, from wearing bikinis to very little, if anything at all. The photos were not taken by him, but were found as saved on his device. They did not find any photos of the 4 victims on his phone, and there were also no photos of family or friends. The day of the murders, they found he called his parents less than 2 hours after the murders were committed. He tried to call his mother at 6:13 a.m. That was missed. He tried to call his father at 6:14 a.m. That seems to be missed. In the article I read, it's not clear whether or not this is something he texted at this time or just something they saw as a pattern. But the investigator said in text messages he would say, "Father, why did mother not respond? Why is she not answering the phone?" He did connect with his mother at 6:17 a.m., and that call lasted 36 minutes. He called again at 8:03 a.m. The duration of that call was 54 minutes, and the investigator noted this is in the time frame he was driving back to the crime scene. At 9 a.m., the prosecutor said he was at the crime scene and stayed for around 10 minutes. Now, around 9 a.m., he called his mother, and the duration of that was 9 minutes. At 4:05 p.m., he called her. That was a 2-minute duration call. And the last call of the day was at 5:23 p.m. The duration of that was 96 minutes. So throughout the day, from the first call to the last, he spoke to his mother for over 3 hours on the phone. And we heard from someone who was in jail with BK that he would spend hours every day talking to his mom. So you see that pattern here. On a normal day, he would start calling his mom around 4 a.m. What were some other things that were found? He downloaded information about Danny Rolling on November 19th. That's just a week after the murders. Rolling killed several college students with a K-bar knife, and he broke into their homes through a sliding glass door. He killed 4 women and 1 man. On December 25th, BK downloaded stories on more than 20 specific serial killers, including Danny Rolling, Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, Ed Kemper, and Dennis Rader. December 28th, 2 days before he was arrested, he downloaded a Fox News story about 90 Elantras that had been given registration to park at the University of Idaho between 2018 and 2022. That same day, he downloaded 4 of the daily updates about the murders from the Moscow Police Department. Now, in fact, between November 26th and December 28th, he downloaded the updates 9 times. On December 29th, the day before his arrest at 9:08 a.m., he read a New York Times article about the search for the Elantra. 2 minutes later, he searched for an auto detailing shop And at 9:19 a.m., he looked for used cars, including a Ford Fusion, a Volkswagen Jetta, and a Honda Civic. The same day, he searched the phrase psychopaths, paranoid, wiretapping, and serial killers. He also downloaded information about the serial killer Wayne Nance. Now, the investigator that works for Celebrate that gave these interviews also worked the Delphi murder case and the Osama bin Laden case. She was shocked once they pulled the data and found what little they had to work with. She said BK was incredibly skilled when it came to scrubbing his phone. There is more about this. I just haven't gotten deep into the documents, but I'm not going to do anything repetitive as to the other documents as far as roommate statements. But if there's anything different or new, I will cover that on a future episode. On January 5th, 2023, a search warrant was served on BK at the Latah County Jail for a collection of prints, his hair, buccal swabs for DNA, as well as photos. Moving on to interviews with classmates and staff at Washington State University. There was an interview on January 9th, 2023, and this person knew BK because of his seeking his criminal justice doctorate. They met twice in social settings. Once was at a barbecue for new students, and the second time was at a Christmas event at the college. The man said BK was socially awkward around people, and BK had been removed from redacted, it doesn't say here, because of his rudeness and unprofessional behavior towards other students and professors. I'm assuming the PhD program, because we do know he was taken out of that and lost his funding. He suggested investigators talk to someone whose name is redacted about complaints that others brought against BK. There was an interview with a woman who is an employee at WSU about her knowledge and interactions with BK. During the normal course of her duties, she regularly interacted with BK. This occurred during new student course orientation, course functions, and other course-related activities. She is responsible for complaints made by students, including student interactions with faculty members as well as other students. Initially, her interactions with BK were ordinary, but she said he did come across as being lonely. She was also from Pennsylvania, and they would strike up conversations about hiking in the local area. But as the weeks progressed, BK would hang out in the hallways of her office and someone else's office. She described BK as creepy, and he would simply stand at her desk and stare at her or her coworker. And at one stage, he was blocking her coworker in her desk area. He would also follow them to their cars at the end of the day. That behavior prompted them to have someone meet them after work to escort them to their cars. The complaints from faculty, administration staff, and students were referencing BK's rude and belittling behavior towards women, as well as his unprofessional, rude dealings with his, and it's redacted here. This resulted in a mandatory training class for all graduate students regarding behavior expectations. She said BK attended this class and he sat at the back with his hands behind his head, staring at the ceiling. Breaking away from WSU here for a second, there was an interview with someone who met BK at a pool party on July 9th, 2022 that was near the University of Idaho campus. They had a brief conversation about hiking in the area. She told BK she had a hiking group that she could introduce him to, and the two exchanged phone numbers. Nothing stood out about him at the time, and after the homicides, she did search her phone, remembering he had sent her a text, and she found it. The text said, "Hey, I'm pretty sure we spoke about hiking trips yesterday. I really enjoyed that activity, so let me know. Thanks." In an interview with someone else regarding that pool party, she and a friend were approached by BK. She was uncomfortable with how he was talking to her and her friend. She told him she was married and tried to end the conversation, but he kept talking to them. At one point, a man came over and intervened, placing himself between BK and the women. However, BK continued to be fixated on the girls. That interaction ended shortly after redacted, and BK exchanged phone numbers, I'm assuming, for that hiking group. There was an interview with another graduate student who was a fellow colleague of BK's. She was working with him on a project in a limited capacity, and she also had limited interaction with him. Once was on a Zoom call, and the other was a follow-up question concerning the project. She first met him in August in her office, and 2 other graduate students were present. He told her he was from Pennsylvania and that he enjoyed hiking. They also talked about his field of study, which was offender decision-making. He was very interested in how emotion played a role in how offenders made decisions. Throughout the semester, the 2 routinely discussed criminal justice topics. At one point, they talked about the use of alcohol and marijuana and its effects on society. He said he wasn't a drinker and didn't understand why people drank. She said that he really liked to discuss research and he liked to dominate conversations. She described him as standing in the doorway and hovering. She never felt uncomfortable around him, but said he did have a macho demeanor about him and he would be puffed up. The only thing she felt that was off about him was his intense stare. He would intensely stare at people even when he wasn't having a conversation with that person. She described one time having a conversation with him in her office and she tried to end the conversation, but he wouldn't stop talking. She told him she was leaving because she wanted to avoid getting a parking violation, so she walked out and he continued to talk to her while she was walking to her car. She had no relationship with him outside of school, and she did not see him much after the murders. She was aware of an issue he had with, the name is redacted. He was perceived by fellow classmates as dominant and disrespectful to female instructors. At one point, a student came into her office crying because of a classroom discussion BK was having with her. His behavior could be described as possibly sexist, and she said he really did not like to be interrupted when he was talking. She said he seemed uptight and serious and wanted to come off as intelligent. Her understanding was he wanted to possibly become a professor. She did recall another instance where other staff pulled her aside and made her aware of a possible issue with him stalking another member of the staff. An incident took place where he asked out the other staff member and had followed that individual out to her car. A report was filed with the Office of Civil Rights, and then he asked out someone else. The person was shocked when the homicides happened, and in hindsight, the homicides may have taken place, in her opinion, because he had been rejected. She had no knowledge of BK talking about the homicides at all. In another interview with a fellow grad student, she didn't like him, and they didn't share the same focus of study. He would constantly talk during class. In the classes they had together, she said he would constantly talk and would pick fights with other classmates, so much that one time a student left the class very upset. She heard he had an incident with a female professor where he disagreed with the grade she gave him. He went to a male professor to complain about that grade. The female professor he disagreed with said he was weird, but never threatened her. In one instance, after class, BK and this woman was alone. When she was trying to leave the classroom, he blocked her exit. She said he blocked her with a physical stance. He said they should meet up sometime and talk about her professional career. She felt like he just wanted to keep the discussion going, even though class was over. Now, prior to the homicides, she noticed he always used his phone, and she thought he was being studious and taking notes. But after the homicides, he stopped bringing his phone to class and then brought a laptop. She also noticed a change in his appearance after the murders. Before, he was always clean-shaven and very neatly dressed. Afterwards, he would come in with facial hair, and he would be disheveled. He also started wearing a thick blue coat that he never took off during the 3-hour class, and she said the weather did not call for a heavy coat. She said he regularly engaged in class discussions, and after the murders, it was a topic they discussed in class. But he did not participate in those discussions, but did engage in other conversations and appeared to be very cheerful. She said he would always play the devil's advocate in class. She said students were required to read 4 books that semester, with the 3rd book focusing on DNA evidence. He was heavily involved in the discussions about that particular book. In October, BK was at a department bar outing at a downtown bar in Pullman. He purchased a bottle of wine, and according to her, he drank the entire bottle. She said there was a running tally that some of the female students had. That tally tracked his tardiness to female instructors' class, versus the male instructors' classes. The tally showed he was consistently late to female instructor classes, but never late to a male-instructed class. Another classmate of his was interviewed. She first met him at a meet and greet for the PhD program, and that was on August 22nd of 2022. She went with a friend. After the event, her and her friend talked about how they really didn't like BK based on their interactions with him, but also tried to give him the benefit of the doubt because to them, it appeared he was trying to overly impress them both. During the second or third week of school, she invited the whole cohort to her apartment, and he came, but he was 2.5 hours late. A week later, he began telling others what medications she took and for what. She thinks he looked in her bathroom cabinet because she doesn't openly share with others her medication or what it's for. She began to distance herself from him and heard complaints from other female graduate students about how he would make them uncomfortable. And as the semester progressed, there were numerous interactions with him that would make people uncomfortable, such as him staring at students weirdly during class and then spatially trapping fellow students in the student offices. She specifically listed the people he would trap for long periods of time. She said there was a spiff during class between Redacted and BK where he was mansplaining something to someone. As the disagreement progressed, Redacted had the class move on from this topic. And in follow-up questioning about this, the person provided the general context of the disagreement, and BK said mansplaining did not exist. She was unaware of any friends he may have had, but says he would have been close to his office mates who were international students. She assumed he was helping them learn English and prepare for the English as a foreign language test. When asked about his overall performance, she didn't think he was doing very well because they could get a general idea of everyone's grades through a process of elimination. She heard rumors that he had stated that an instructor was inadequate to grade his papers because she was too foreign. She didn't know about his grades specifically, but she did know he was not doing well as a teaching assistant. She said Redacted complained about not getting enough help from him, and halfway through the semester, the professor put out a request for graders, and the person being interviewed and another person applied for and started doing. She thought it was unusual for a professor to request additional graders halfway through a semester. She said after the murders, his demeanor did change. She goes through the wearing of the puffy coat. She provided examples of him arriving late to class and her negative perception of him being late to graduate-level courses. She said he never missed a class except for once. She thinks that may have been the Thursday after the homicides, and that was for one of their method classes. He did attend the Tuesday and Wednesday class. She also admitted that she and her fellow classmates talked a lot of crap about BK in a group text. She provided additional examples of BK blocking fellow students in the offices and showed an email from someone whose name is redacted that said, "Help me, this conversation is weird." That was dated October 28th, 2022. She said BK would stand in doorways and not leave when it was clear, based on the social cues, that the person in the office was packing up and wanting to leave. She was aware of formal complaints to Human Resources by someone whose name is redacted for statements he made after another person had stepped away. As a result of this complaint, a meeting took place regarding discrimination and harassment as a department. That meeting took place sometime in October or November, and she could not remember the exact date. When asked if he had a girlfriend or other acquaintances, she was unaware if he consistently interacted with anyone. He was only around when classes were in session and rarely saw him if they weren't. He didn't really discuss social plans, but she did know he was interested in baseball and he liked to spend time alone in the woods. He told her he did not have any social media accounts. She noticed injuries to his hands in October and joked he must have been punching drywall in anger. He told fellow students he had been boxing, and that's where the injuries came from. She said during 2 extensive student presentations on sexual victimization on college campuses and stalking, he sat through them and did not inject himself into the conversation. Now, regarding the death penalty, He previously appeared to be in support of the death penalty and made statements that the victims' families should have a say as to whether or not the death penalty is imposed. And another interview with a classmate. They attended classes twice on Tuesdays, once on Wednesday, and once on Thursdays together. Her interactions were mainly in the classroom because her office was in a secure area upstairs as part of her internship, and his was downstairs. She said in the classroom, she felt he needed to assert his knowledge upon fellow students. He would over-explain offender decision-making, and he was doing his final research paper on burglary. She was sick the week after the murders and was gone for Thanksgiving break. But after returning to class on November 29th and 30th, she said she noticed he had cuts on his hands. She described them as what looked like cat scratches with Band-Aids over those cuts. They did have harassment training on November 8th, 2022, and it was rumored that the training was because of BK. She could not confirm that. After that meeting, she said his behavior changed and he was quieter and did not speak up as much in class. On Wednesday, November 9th, he was late, and then after 10 minutes, he got up and left class to go get coffee, which she said was unusual. She recalled another time when he trapped her in a conversation and then showed her photos of him hiking in the Moscow Mountains, and she said he appeared to be alone. On December 4th, 2022, she found snow prints leading to the back window of her apartment, and whoever left those had backtracked within the tracks. And in response, her fiancé installed security cameras. She requested they call Redacted, who I assume is her fiancé, and he told investigators he was playing video games when someone jiggled the door handle to the apartment. When he got up and looked, no one was out there. He estimated the date for this is sometime between October 26th and December 9th. So that's where we're going to end it today. I still have hundreds of pages to go through, but I think it's very interesting to see how similar all of the interviews are with people who interacted with him at Washington State University. I thought we were about finished, and then bam, they dropped all these, and I want to completely finish this case and be done. I will keep pouring through these documents to see if there's anything interesting, and we will do some episodes in the future. May not be daily like I was doing, because tomorrow we do have Donna Adelson jury selection starting, and that is going to be my commitment from beginning to end. So, hope you guys have a good rest of your evening, and we will see you soon.